we can go sit someplace. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for coming. If this works out, this will be great. If it doesn't work out, it's going to be great anyway. None of us are really familiar with doing this, at least not in this family. Thank you again all for coming. And we're going to start. Tim, where are you? A lot of people, even in a way who was not terribly ill, but was sick, and people knew, and people would call or people would text or the various ways and say, what can I do? How can I help you? What is it that, any way that I can help? Most things were food that people gave. There was a point in time where Vladimir Zelensky would have been happy to have come to the house, and there was easily would have fed the Ukrainian army for a period of time. I don't know often what people can do, but today I do have something that you can do, and I expect you all to do it. And that's going to be to sing. I would love it if you are capable of standing to stand. Ron, I don't know if that's okay for you or not, as you walk across that moment. And that his first song is something I suspect almost everybody here knows. And if not, we should have the lyrics, and it's down here. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Come on, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the slower. Study war, no. Let's get this right. I ain't gonna study war no more. 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 I'm gonna shake hands with every woman and man down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna shake hands with every woman and man down by the riverside and study war no more. Last time. I ain't gonna study war no more. 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 I ain't study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Stand up, stay up, don't sit. Don't sit. One more thing that I learned from when my son Daniel got married a year ago that someone had suggested, and I think it's a wonderful thing. Turn to your left, your right, behind you. Say hello to somebody that you don't know, ideally. What's your relationship to Ray? Just take a moment. Sit down. If you believe, then Ray probably heard that. I want to do a thank you to three people in particular. But first, let me kind of approach it this way. When we got ready, realized that we were going to do something, the first thought was to go to Art Rage. For those of you who are not familiar with it, Art Rage is a local art gallery. The executive director, certainly that's the proper title of whom is here, Rose Viviano. And the question was, could we do this at Art Rage? It's a place for peace and justice. It's a place that Ray would feel comfortable, and it's bright and a lot of positives. But the question was it going to be able to fit people who would want to come? And I think the answer is pretty clearly. So gave that up. I went to May Memorial, another wonderful place. May Memorial Universalist Unitarians, and they have a lovely social hall and sanctuary. And it wasn't possible to work out something with that. I went to First Universalist Unitarians over on Waring Road, another similar organization, and they had a larger room, but it was kind of dark, and it didn't have, I get home and there's a text from the triumvirate of Pastor Alicia, Pastor Beth, and Galen Murphy, who's the kind of secular head of this joint. And basically it says, I don't know, I've said this a lot of times, and I can't get through this. And it's just this. We want to support you. And this is not going to be a whole thing, just this moment. We want to support you. We want to support your family. We want to give you the church. So what more can you ask in the community? Okay. I volunteer on Friday mornings here at the food distribution. I don't remember how I came to do this. I can only tell you it's wonderful. Working with these people and for these people is wonderful. I don't believe in any kind of religious affiliation. I believe in these people. So I wanted to thank them. Okay, there's one other place that there may be some difficulty for me to get through, but it's basically that. I mean, I think so much of them. Yeah, it's okay. I know Beth has told me a number of times that it's okay to speak and cry at the same time. So I've done that. All right, so as I say, this is new for us. We're going to have remarks by a number of people and some other singing, another song of which at the end that you will know, and a third song which some of the people clearly will know here, and I'll get back to that. But now it's time for some speechifying, if you will. We met in college, actually met in theater, and specifically we met in what was called the Musical Comedy Society of CCNY, and that's City College of New York. CCNY was an independent school at the time and is now a unit of the City University of New York. City College, Brooklyn College, Queens College, Hunter College were all entrees into high-class higher education for basically New York City families with smart kids, but not a lot of money. Tuition was free. Tuition was free. Even then, this was an argument between upstate people had to pay something, and city college people didn't pay anything. There were no dormitories. It was a commuter school. You lived at home. The subway cost 15 cents. Many students had what was called the Regent Scholarship, and I suspect there's a number of people here who had a Regent Scholarship. And that was 4 years, $1,000. Not $1,000 a year, but $1,000 for 4 years. Things were very different at the time. Ray was one of those smart kids, the oldest of 3 sisters, one who died as a teenager, and the other sister, Lori, who was here and will speak on her own later. Ray's father was a single parent, Ray's mom having died when she was 12 years old. But even then, at that point in time, Ray knew that getting up in the morning, getting up early was not going to be for her a characteristic she retained for the rest of her life. After sleeping through early classes, I remember some of this, in her freshman year, then Ray arranged her schedule accordingly. Is this okay? Are you able to hear me? Good, okay. Ray studied ballet as a young child, and after school, this is after New York City public schools, she would take the subway and go to Carnegie Hall, that Carnegie Hall, and go to ballet class. Mind you, this is pre-teen years that she would do this. Things were very different then than now. After ballet class, Ray would go to the Horn and Hardart Automat in Times Square to have dinner by herself in the women and children's section. And if you're not familiar with what the Automat is, Google it. It's worth looking at. It was like being inside a vending machine in a sense. A very interesting thing. So it is worth it. So being a dancer, Ray was a natural for being part of the dancing chorus. And that year, the musical was Little Abner, which was taken from the comic strip Little Abner by Al Capp. And it actually had, this is Ron, pretty much for you, a certain amount of anti-capitalist stuff in it. Very small, but for a musical a little bit at the time. Ray loved that when the curtain would open, and I can't remember if it opened or it raised, I think it opened, she would be on stage alone. She would be the very first person that people would see as the performer, as the village of Dogpatch, USA would come to life. I played Papa Yoakum, but that's another story. Near the end of the college year each year, the Musical Comedy Society would put on a musical review with many numbers taken from Broadway shows. And that year, Ray reached her performing pinnacle in a number from the musical Gypsy. And Gypsy is the story of the burlesque queen, Gypsy Rose Lee. Well, Gypsy is trying to make it in burlesque. And basically that is to say being a stripper. But she needs help in attracting audience attention. And Ray played one of 3 veteran performers who gave Gypsy advice on how to get ahead in the business. Ray's character was in this song called You Gotta Have a Gimmick. And Ray's character had such memorable lines as, once I was a schlepper, now I'm Miss Mazeppa. And me, but I do it with a horn. You can kind of visualize. Ray's costume consisted of a trumpet and little else. This is Ray Kramer that I'm speaking about here. The audience loved it. I know you want to see photos of this, but the camera hadn't been invented at the time. It's a good story, and it's true. It's really true. And she was very good at it. Much later in time, well into Ray's activist life, we became involved in an every other Saturday night bowling league in Liverpool. We had a number of teammates, a few of whom are here, but our main partners were Andy Malloy, who is here, and Marie Summerwood. I'm sorry to say, wonderful Marie died about 4 years ago. Needless to say, Ray would occasionally wear one of her Peace and Justice t-shirts, sure to upset those of right-wing sensibilities, of whom there were a number in our league. And as you can also guess, Ray never came to fisticuffs and represented the commie pinkos in a positive light. It was meeting with people we would have probably no other connection with otherwise, some of whom turned out, to be a lot more in tune than you would have guessed. You make certain presumptions and often turn out to be incorrect with them. In her days as Coach Ray, when she was in soccer, Ray would always exhort the kids, play hard, play clean, and don't be concerned about winning. Many a bowling night, however, as we're late in the 3 games that we'd have, Ray would whisper to the rest of the team, "We can still beat them." Usually we couldn't. I don't know if lefties are just not good at bowling. It was fun. Since Ray's death, I've been cleaning up various piles of things in the house and recently came across a check addressed to Ray for a substantial sum of money. Andy knows about this, Marie doesn't, and Andy doesn't know how much it was. And this represented our, I believe, because I have nobody to ask, our team's winnings that year in the bowling league. I considered there was a phone number on the check, and I presumed that the league secretary was still around, and I thought, maybe I'll call him. Maybe we can get this money after all. The check was dated 2005. Okay, where I lost myself here for a second. There's one more thing that's happened in this past week. I got a letter from the New York State Board of Elections. Ray, amongst other things, one year was the treasurer for the Green Party candidate, Michael Donnelly. Does anybody remember Michael Donnelly? Not many people. Michael didn't do that well. And Ray had never filed the required paperwork that you were supposed to file each year. And each year a letter would come from the Board of Elections saying you got to do this, otherwise all these things can happen to you. After 10 years, and this, I got another one of those recently, and then got, which Ray said, just throw it out. And then got this last one that basically said, after 10 years of sending you threatening letters, we give up. You don't have to do anything. There are more stories. There are lots more stories, like the Lori and I found in the bottom of the, well, in the back of the house where everybody comes in, there's a broom closet. You know, in old houses had a broom closet, a little not very deep closet. You could put things. And in truth, what was mostly kept in there was a bag of more plastic bags and a whole lot of Ray's favorite illegal substance at the time. For those of you who knew her well. And down at the bottom there was $247 worth of rolled pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. There's nobody to ask, what were you doing this for? There was no point in our lives that you needed all these coins. I mean, there was the annual garage sale, but things weren't done in pennies and nickels and maybe some quarters. Very strange. So that's one story of that. And then there's the question also of the rubber chickens that came from the, for those of you who've been here a long time, the Westcott Variety Store on the corner of Westcott and Harvard Place. There were others, but for the moment, that's all for that. I would like to talk briefly about one more thing. Do you ever think about who you would have been had you not met a particular person, had you not been somehow or other associated with a particular person? I've thought about this an awful lot, and just not since just recently, but in the past as well. This has always been to me. And I can't imagine that I would have been the same person. For better or for worse, who I am has been influenced by my 55 years with Ray. We've forged different paths, trying to do some good. Ray trying to change the world. Well, I would volunteer for smaller but still important causes. I volunteer often. I've also played a dead Iraqi civilian a few times at the fairgrounds, given out flyers to semi-hostile people at the fairgrounds, amongst other things. My home has welcomed numerous overnight protesters, activists, lawyers. These things don't necessarily come naturally to me. And I really question whether I would have done the things that I do had it not been for our life together. And I can only hope that I had some positive influence on Ray as well. Thank you. There's going to be, as I said, some other speaking, and folks will introduce themselves to you, and that's it.
Thank you. Wow, bright light up there. Well, it's wonderful to look out at this group and know that these are all of Ray's friends, all of us who have been influenced by the life of Ray Kramer. My name is Ann Tiffany, and I'd like to begin today by reading a poem. This was written by Paul Frazier, a fellow activist, and Paul was very active in the Catholic worker movement. I mention that because of the poem. You'll hear some references. But he wrote this and asked me to read it because he was not able to be here. I had the chance back in the day to walk and talk with Dorothy Day. And what's that got to do with Ray, you say? A lot. Dorothy's life, it seemed to me, focused quite a bit on hospitality. Now, when protesters made their way to Syracuse and needed a place to stay, you'd often hear someone say, "Oh, let's stay with Lanny and Ray." And heading to Lanny and Ray's for a short stay meant bagels and coffee and conversations about hot topics of the day. You'd leave energized to walk the walk after a brunch of meaningful talk. Now, Dorothy Day didn't avoid prison and jail and would occasionally repeat, "It's good to have a little retreat." Nonviolence resistance was the way to be when confronting the powers that be. And Ray had a way of confronting such power. She didn't hide, and she didn't cower. And that made you glad, and you would take some pride that you and Ray were on the same side. Clear as a bell, Ray would take the stand and stood her ground in the presence of the courtroom. It was quite profound. She could move beyond the judge's friendly word, "Hey, Ray, how are you?" And she would immediately talk about who was harming who. Ray did time with a graceful stance, and you'd never know by giving her a glance that jails and prisons were her place to be. Ray cleared the way with cops that kept getting kind of meaner and meaner, and she took her police liaison job with graciousness and clear, delightful demeanor. Arrests at Hancock went without a hitch, and many a day we would say, "Thank you, Ray." And a couple of times, her efforts would lead the police to say, okay, you can stay. Block the gate, if you will, but only for an hour's stay." Years and years of garage sales, you'd find Ray in the thicket of searching for justice and also providing raffle tickets. Working for justice meant countless hours to gather and talk, to encourage all of us to walk the walk. And after endless meetings, I didn't really know what Ray meant when she'd say, "That's apropos." So when I hear that word and work to help people get free, I know that Ray's spirit will be there for me. That's from Paul Frazier. And now I'm going to talk about another part of my life with Ray Kramer. I didn't know her as a soccer coach. I didn't know her in her work at the health industry, which is what I call it today. it was wonderful to see all these pictures of her early life, and it is all reflected in my experience with Ray. I've been thinking of a word that described Ray to me, and that word is authentic. I think Ray was a very authentic person. She was genuine. She could speak her mind. She was clear. She was very respectful of people. And she accepted people for who they were. We all have some quirks, but Ray accepted everyone for who they were. And I saw that constantly in our travels. There were long trips to Fort Benning, Georgia. There were trips to Columbia, to our sister community. There were trips to Hancock all the time, standing there. And Ray was always open to whomever was present, people that would disagree with us, people who questioned the value of what we were doing. And Ray was just always very open, a good listener. She was a friend of everyone. I remember being in jail cells with Ray, waiting to meet with the judge. And Ray would reach out to all the other women that were there and talk to them about their lives. And my guess is she did the same time that she spent in Danbury prison. My friendship with Ray was one of the most important things in my life. And like Lanny, I think that I am who I am partly because of the comradeship, the trust, the reliance on each other. She was a soulmate. And I will always remember Ray. I have stories in my mind. They creep up all day long when I'm doing things or working on some project. And then they move to my heart. And that's when I grieve and feel very sad and the tears come. Ray will always be with me in my mind and in my heart as one of the best friends, one of the more authentic relationships that I have ever had, and I honor her. Now, I have two very brief vignettes that I want to speak to. I was very fortunate to be able to be with Ray in the last days of her life, and once I arrived at the house, and things were very quiet, and I found her sister Laurie sitting at the bottom of the bed, rubbing Ray's feet. And Ray was murmuring, almost purring, appreciating the care that she had. And I sat there and I was very moved by that experience. The other vignette was also another very real short one that happened very shortly before she died. And I was with Lanny, and it was bedtime, and we were trying to fix the sheets, to tighten the pads, to make Ray as comfortable as possible. We're having some difficulty and had to roll Ray back and forth between us. And all of a sudden, this quiet voice said, "Would you two get the fuck out of here?" I thought you might appreciate that because I sure did. And I loved being able to kiss her goodbye. Ray will remain in my life, in my heart, and in my mind. Thank you.
I hope Pastor Alicia and Pastor Beth That's Beth, so if she says we're okay, we're okay. Didn't know how many people are going to want to say something, and as Beth had presumed, this crowd is likely to have a bunch of people who are going to want to say or do something. So kind of going along and figuring it out as we go. I was going to do another song now, but I think we're going to do bring one more person to read another poem. One of the parts of, Mary, where are you? Why don't you come up instead? One of the parts of Ray's life for the almost entire time that we've been here in Syracuse has been the women's group. A number of the women who are here now have changed over the years, and one of the people who was really instrumental in helping get together, get food stuff together, even though she knew she was going to be out of town, was Amy Zamkoff, a neighbor, a friend, and Amy wanted to write a poem as well, but it had to be in Texas where her son lives, one of her two sons live, and asked Mary Schlechter if Mary would read this. Mary, being a poet as well, seemed a perfectly appropriate thing. And if you have anything additional you want to say, that's up to you. Mary Schlechter.
Okay, thank you, Lanny. I don't have much to say, except that, well, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to start crying, but Ray has been a good friend, a good neighbor, and she will be missed by the Schlechters, and as she's missed by all of you. Amy had a unique relationship with Ray because they were part of a women's group. Sounds like a secret organization, so and they would go on trips, and Amy would tell me about different, no, she didn't tell me, she didn't spill the tea or anything, but she'd tell me, what a wonderful experience it was. And she wished she could be here, and she wrote this poem last weekend, which is incredible. And it's called A Better World. Once you rowed a boat to the center of a lake, angled the oars out of the water, and laid back to read your book in solitude. Drifting, drifting under a cloudless sky. Once you bird-walked along the ocean's edge, gathering sea glass and seashells and driftwood, found objects of your affection. You had earned them those solitary hours, so many years spent caring for others, beginning with your sisters and father when at 12 you slipped into your mother's shoes. Really, your feet wanted ballet slippers and tap shoes and shoulder-shaking rock and roll music as transport beyond Brooklyn. Instead, Brooklyn gave way to Brussels, and suddenly you were a citizen of the world. Fitting because early on you had been set on the path your parents chose, paved with their belief in social justice and their passion for a better world. You had your absolutes. It's never right to terrorize a child. You gave birth to your own cherished children and found ways to model for them all you held dear. You stared down the Goliath of militarism and in the process became number 91096020. You exhorted us to be better than we are, expected us to be better than we are, and now we are drifting, drifting without you to remind us that we are all actors in this life. No script to keep us on track, just footprints on the shore as time's tide rolls in. Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
It's time for a song. There was the question of having something in the way of music that represented Ray's favorite. Ray had, at bare minimum, 100 top 5 songs. Most of them were from the 60s. I'm not sure that, it may be appropriate to do Ray Charles or like that. I got to tell you, our very first date, I went to their house on Woodruff Avenue, had dinner before the younger sisters, Laurie and Jessie, and we went to see Ray Charles at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. It was a considerable way to begin. In any case, In recent times, what has really become a favorite for Ray, or I keep being in the present, what had become a favorite for Ray was a song by Pat Humphries, Emma's Revolution, or Swimming to the Other Side. And I know there's a number of people here who would know that song. The chorus, the verse are the same. And if you can join, if you can pick as you go along, it would be terrific. I'd like to introduce also Tim Schmidt. Tim is my neighbor. And prior to Tim, was Paula Ilakwa is here someplace, our previous neighbor. When we first moved in, Lucas was about 3 or 4, and Paula had 3 girls. And they immediately, like, can we have him, in essence, and played. So we would like to, again, if you can, the things will be here. It's a teeny bit off. If it can be moved to the middle, it would be great. If it can't, it can't. Tim, why don't you go there? So, Swimming to the Other Side. We are living beneath the great Big Dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. I'm alone and I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced at the brink of wisdom. I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open. In perfection it be my crime. Humility I will listen. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living the great Big Dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in this stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. One more verse. When we get there, we'll discover all of the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginnings, and we never noticed they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing that we've arrived. Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living beneath the great Big Dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in this stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can rest this night we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. Thank you. Swimming to the Other Side, Pat Humphries, Emma's Revolution. Laurie, this may be hard. Laurie Kramer, as those of you who read, as those of you who read the obituary, Laurie was here for the 3.5 weeks that Ray was home with hospice, and without whom it would have been impossible.
Well, I really wanted to go before that song came on, because now I'm... The only time I saw Ray cry, maybe ever, in public, was when Lanny and Ann put this up on the gizmo in the dining room. and I saw Ray crying, and I thought, wait a minute, this is, the world is all up. I'm the crybaby, Kramer girl. Ray never cries, and Ray was crying. And I thought, am I supposed to jump in, and take advantage of this moment and say, do you want to talk about what? And I could hear Ray say, no, just going to cry for a while. And okay, so I wrote and rewrote and rewrote. I wanted to say, the good thing about going after other people is you can get rid of stuff that's been said. Lanny mentioned meeting people at bowling that he might never have met otherwise. Ray also had her whole bingo life. And Ray in the bingo sphere with the markers and the little tchotchkes and the talisman, and she loved it. And I don't think Ray ever went anywhere in the world where a bingo game was playing that she did not manage to get to that game. I don't know if it's the first time Ray played bingo, but one rather dramatic day in Brooklyn and Queens, my father and I and Ray had my younger sister's ashes. And we said, what are you going to do with these ashes? Which seems to be a thing that people get stuck with. What are you going to do with the ashes? So we drove them to the cemetery where my mother was buried, and we probably broke at least 400 civic ordinances by picking up the sod and putting our little sister there. That night we thought, well, what can follow that? So we found a bingo game at a church near Erasmus Hall High School, a church, and Flatbush, and within, I think, 20 minutes, Ray won $50. So that was it, the first taste. But maybe it wasn't the first taste, but okay. The world, it will be much lessened after Ray's death, and sometimes, if you're lucky enough, very grateful to catch Lanny in a quiet moment, and you can see it. You can see his face and hug him, don't hug him, make a joke. I look at Lucas and Daniel, the two greatest nephews in the world, and I think of how tough it is to lose Ray now that you're adults, you're men, you have wives, you have children on the way, and you won't have Ray to call and for consults and advice about the rest of your life, but she's here, and just as Ali said, I got to meet Ali today. I thought Ali was a fiction. I thought Ali was this, wow, he's really and he said he talks to his beloved dead all the time, so keep talking to Ray. I want to talk about Ray and time. So Ray had this, once you understood that Ray thought that every hour had 5 quarters, and that, she was never late for things, I don't think, but she was never early. I think Ray got to things when they were going to start. The clocks in her cars for years were always set ahead, but she knew how fast they were. So why did this work? But it worked for Ray. She knew that the clock was 37 minutes fast, 42 minutes fast. So when she'd be driving me back to the airport after coming up to see her and Lanny and Sydney and Nell at Menorah Park, I'd look at the clock and I'd say, Jesus, Ray, the plane, I know the airport is 10 minutes away, but the plane is going to leave and fly. She said, no. It's fast. The clock is fast. Ray and time. My father would tell a story about when he was visiting and Ray coming home from work and making dinner with her. She didn't take her coat off. And she just didn't stop to take her coat off. She got the dinner going. And Sydney's view of this was that Ray was frantic. But I don't think Ray was frantic. I think Ray was controlling time. And if she stopped to take her, I don't know what she thought would happen if she stopped to take off her coat, take off her work shoes. Did she eat dinner with her coat on, Lanny? I don't know. Maybe she never took her coat off. Ray had a theory about the 100 days, which I'm not quite clear. If anybody knows what she meant by the 100 days, tell me later. This is one of the things I was going to talk about with her when we got to be old ladies sitting on the porch in rocking chairs, which was one of Ray's visions of she and I guess at, 90 and 93, we would be sitting there, and she'd explain it all to me. But I think part of it was if you were in the middle of something difficult, like a typical Syracuse winter, not the kind you folks have been having, you would know that in 100 days, the snow would be gone and the ice would melt and things would be better. At some point in the hospital in February, that month in the hospital, again, the door was open, like Ray crying. She said, "I really wish this was springtime." And I couldn't jump into it. I just said, right, so that the porch door could be open and Oscar could sit out on the porch. But that was Ray's theory of 100 days. I will jump ahead. Ray and shopping. So Ray didn't go shopping to any retail places, online or otherwise. Ray didn't like new stuff. This vintage sweater, Ray liked to find vintage for me. But for Ray, shopping meant going to the beach, any beach, and picking up all the treasures. And their house is filled with beach glass and stones and pebbles and rocks and shells. And she always took such joy. It was like, look what I found. And she'd fill up this apron, and the stuff would all be transported back from the Adirondacks or Maine or wherever. I think one reason she loved going to Atlantic City was not just the gambling, which was great fun, but there was a beach. So that's Ray and shopping. Okay. Ray and 2 of the 5 senses. So I think Ray had the sense of touch and her sense of taste were developed to a point beyond, mortal women and men. Ray loved how things felt when they felt good, and she despised when things did not feel good. This is why she wore her clothes inside out, not because she was nuts, Lanny, but because the seams of her clothes, seams hurt. So she would turn her clothes inside out, clothes that she had gotten at the Salvation Army. And that's why Ray wore her clothes inside out. She also she loved the way a certain drinking glass felt against her lips. So Ray was quite sensuous in that regard. And the sense of taste. So Ray loved food. Ray loved thinking about food and feeding people and shopping for food and bringing signature dishes to events. To me, I know that the illness is not evil and that the illness had no mentality and had no character, but to me, the wickedness of Ray and food just parting company. Pretty bad, horrible to witness, and we couldn't say anything about it. Okay, giving Ray gifts. So giving Ray a gift was always a landmine, which you were bound to have blow up in your face. If you it was best to send Ray stuff in the mail and then talk with her on the phone. Because Ray, our cousin and sister and wife and sister-in-law and mom, Ray would look at the gift and look at you, and she'd say, "Is it okay if I don't keep it?" I mean, Ray didn't have the socialized cell in her head about, say thank you, put it away, re-gift it. She always told you the truth, and Ray always told you the truth. And if the truth hurt, well, go and feel bad, but this is what Ray was going to do. So I think once or twice on the phone, Ray would say, "Oh, I got your package." And I think, "Oh, shit, here it comes." And I'm waiting. Once she didn't say, "Is it all right if I," and she just said, "It's great." That was a big deal. Ray told me, and I'm sure she told Lanny, and maybe her sons, but maybe different. instructions to Lucas and Daniel. She told us no whining and no crying about this illness. If you need to feel bad about this, talk amongst yourselves, don't tell me. I think I followed those instructions. I don't think I ever said to her how badly I felt about her being sick. She said, talk with Lanny. You know, you and Lanny can be miserable together. And I thought, I can't imagine anything more intrusive than calling Lanny up and say, hey, you want to talk about how bad you feel about Ray's last scan? So I didn't, and I unloaded on Charlie a lot. I unloaded on friends. But I tried to respect that, you know, no crying, no whining. All right, I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff. I need to tell 3 little stories. 2 of them take place on Fenimore Street, where Ray and I were. Oh, wait a minute, before I go on. This is what I've been blowing my nose in, so, yeah. And I have this because Ray came to address an after-school leadership class that I taught in conjunction with Hunter College at the high school that I taught at for 30 years. And she brought a bunch of these, and she told this room filled with Brooklyn teenagers who didn't make a sound for an hour. They were like, I mean, she had them at, I've been to jail. But then she went on to tell them why. So this is this. This is the leotard that Ray wore at the Carnegie Hall ballet recital. And it has a Pioneer Youth Camp sewn-in label in it with my name because I inherited this wonderful garment. And I wore it as a garment. So this is Ray's leotard. Okay, Fenimore Street. Fenimore Street is where we lived in Brooklyn. This first story, I don't come out too well in this first story. Ray came into our bedroom and I was swooning over this little pin. It was either Raggedy Ann or Raggedy Andy, little thing with rhinestones. And she said, now, you know, when you're somebody's sibling and you share a room, you know what everybody has. She said, where did you get, what is that? I said, look at this great thing. She said, where did you get that? It turned, am I embarrassed? No, but it's mortifying. I had taken it from a girl up the block. I had seen her wearing it, and I had to have it. I just had to have it. And I was visiting, and I went into the girl's jewelry box, and I took it. And I took it home, and Ray caught me, and she grabbed me, walked me down the stairs, up the block, into the other building, and made me confess, apologize. There were no parents. I don't know why there were no parents involved, but Ray was little mommy. Second Fenimore Street story. My father and mom were sitting on the stoop, and they see coming up the block, Ray's marching up the block, looking very serious and important. And I'm behind her by about 10 feet, and you know what Pigpen looks like in the Charlie Brown? So I'm dirty, and my hair is a mess, and my nose is running, I'm crying. Sidney and Beulah jump up, and they say, what happened to her? And Ray said, she was fighting. And then there was a beat, and my father said, and? Did you break it? You broke it up, right? And Ray said, no. And they said, why? This is all apocryphal, because I don't remember it, but Sidney wouldn't have lied to me, would he? And she said, no, I didn't break it up because Lori started it. So if you think that Ray became who she was as an adult, you know, this fierce, dynamic, this rest in power, this cog in the wheel of justice, and no, I think she was probably like this as a zygote. Ray, I started the fight. I needed to get the snot beat out of me because okay, last story, Ray's jailhouse conversion. So Ray was probably halfway through her time at Danbury, and we would talk on the phone, and this might have been Lucas before the weekend that we went to Connecticut and met Nell's sister and rode up in the Cadillac. But you would talk to the inmate before you visited, and Ray said, "I'm so glad you're coming up this weekend because I need to tell you something I've been doing that's been very important to me." And I know she'd been engaging people on the dessert line, and I know she'd been talking truth to power, and I know she'd been having a great time picking up cigarette butts in the yard, and she was all trim. And I said, "Yeah, okay." And she said, "I've been studying Torah." And I could hear, I said, "What?" And she said, "I've been studying Torah, and I want to talk about it. It's very meaningful to me." I said, "Could you tell me more?" She said, "No, this is a public phone. There's people waiting online to use the phone. Who knows who's listening in? I'll see you soon." I get up, spend a nice day visiting. It's getting time to go. Ray hasn't brought up the Torah. So I said, "You need to tell me about the Torah." She said, "Okay." And she pointed to the other side of the lobby where people met people. She said, "You see that room over there?" And it was like a study. And it had very nice chairs and books, not just religious books, but works of fiction. She said, "Every Friday, I've been going in there. And if you go in there and say that you want to, be alone with your thoughts of Judaism and God, you get wonderful grape juice and terrific cookies." So it was not a jailhouse conversion. I said, "Really? That's what?" She said, "Isn't that great? I discovered this." And so that was Ray. Ray would use anything if it made her feel better, if it didn't hurt anybody else. She had no inkling of thinking, "Oh, wait, I'm being really rude to God, and to Moses." No. She got to be private. She got to be out of the scrum of all the women and their miserable stories. And she got to have really good grape juice and terrific cookies. So be kind to each other, be fair. I'd say be true to yourself always. Ray was. I don't know if she ever compromised. And really, it was too bad if that bumped into what you needed. You just had to wait until it came around. Okay, I can't believe I did not fall over. Thank you.
More than you ever wanted to know about. So you can see living with Ray wasn't the easiest thing in the world. Daniel, do you wish to speak? Okay, Daniel.
Hello, I'm Daniel, Ray's youngest son. Ray was an activist, a fighter of injustice, a social worker, and a beacon of the community. She was also an avid bingo player, a connoisseur of nickel slots, and had an unhealthy addiction to blackjack. So once or twice a year for many years, we would make little escapes to Atlantic City, Niagara Falls, Turning Stone Casino, much to the chagrin of Lanny and folks at the Peace Council. And I was fortunate enough to be her partner in these small crimes. We would rarely win, and that was the least of our problems. I remember sleeping in the car one time in Canada in the middle of winter because we lost all the money we brought with us. And one time we went to Turning Stone for the early bingo games, and we left 10 hours later. We realized that we left the car running the entire time we were there. We both very much look forward to these trips. I think Ray could be a version of herself that she couldn't really be elsewhere, a small indulgence into a hobby that didn't quite agree with her morals. It wasn't just the gambling that we loved. It was the meals together at the buffet, or the long talks during the drive, or just a judgment-free space where we could gamble for hours at a time, free from whatever responsibilities we had back home. Also in Atlantic City, she loved the beach, as Lori mentioned. She would take long walks collecting seashells, something my wife and I have done ever since, and we have a collection from many places around the world. She would, of course, also pick up garbage as she went. She just couldn't help herself. was something else on these trips, too, that was indicative of her personality. She would sit at a blackjack table for hours at a time, and I would pop in and out to visit, and without a doubt, her table was always the happiest. Ray, with her tiny wagers and little troll trinkets for good luck, was just infectious with positivity. She would know everyone's name sitting at the table and would always learn details of the dealer's life. That was just her way. No matter the setting, she would exude this positivity, whether with her family or in jail or towards those she was protesting with or even those she was protesting against. She had a way of treating other people with dignity and respect that would always leave a lasting memory. This is the lesson I hope I have learned from her, and I think is the essence of her work towards social justice, that treating other people with decency and dignity is a human right. And if I can take an ounce of that lesson to heart, she will be proud of me forever. And I have one more small poem from Arthur Rhine, her friend for 60 years or more, who couldn't be here today. There's no title. For 76 years, Ray Kramer impersonated an ordinary woman. Don't let the glasses fool you. She was our superhero. We know her superpower. She radiated warmth. Who here has failed to feel her fire? How many children were fed and comforted and enlightened by that glow? Now that we're grown, it's on us to carry on, to keep that light shining for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Lucas, where are you hanging out?
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Lucas, Ray's eldest son. Kind of what Lori was saying about going after people so you could take things out. I kind of had right now the opposite feeling. All these stories and memories, I want to put things in. I have a lot to say already, so I'll see if I can get some in there. Thank you so much to everyone who's here today for the amount of support, kindness, and warmth my family, and especially my dad, has felt from all of you these past few months and years. These few months have been totally overwhelming, but seeing the amount of people here today, the things they've already said to me, said to us, it's been equally overwhelming in a positive way. I was, and probably still am, really unsure about what I should say right now. Is this a eulogy? Am I just expressing this grief communally so I don't have to feel it as strong individually? I don't know. What is important to me, I think, is to share a little bit about my mom, our relationship, and what this part of our story has been like for me. This day and this memorial have been a very useful distraction. Thinking about this event has helped me to not think about, and in a way not accept, that my mom is no longer here. This distraction strategy is in place just before she died too. When she went to the hospital, I kept thinking, okay, just get to the next step. Just get back to baseline. Just get to transitional care. Just get to home. Just to get to whatever the next step is. During February and March of this year, as I would leave my parents' house and say to them, I'll see you in a week, or I'll let you know when I can get back up, there was always a next step, an upcoming landmark. Always an action or an event that if I focused on, it would allow me to ignore how she was certainly going to die soon. In actuality, it was all just kicking the emotional can down the road. This memorial today is the end of the kicking of that can. After today, life without her, life without my mom's physical presence, life without Grandma Ray begins. One of my mom's most endearing habits, but at the time incredibly embarrassing for me, was how she would collect and throw out garbage wherever we went. At the beach, on vacation, Berry Park after Eastside soccer games. That was her thing. This can that I've been kicking, this postponing of reality, suspension of grief, it's come to an end. And now I have to metaphorically pick up that can, throw it out, and move on to a reality of life without my mom. This will be very hard, as I've already started to notice. Her presence, therefore her absence, are already noticed everywhere. In Syracuse, in Brooklyn, in my face, occasionally in the face of my daughter, my aunt, my habits, my morals, my shortcomings, my summer plans, the way we set the table for dinner, kicking a soccer ball. Still, here are some possibly lesser known and perhaps paradoxical facts about my mom. She has promoted the concept of questioned authority in all facets of our lives from as early as I can remember, but would scold and correct her granddaughter for dealing to the dealer's right when playing Uno. She has promoted anti-corporate agenda at every opportunity and has drank more Pepsi than anyone I've ever met. She was a fervent anti-capitalist who decried corruption and championed anti-consumerism and brought me to my first blackjack table at age 11 while on a Carnival cruise. This last one may be more about me. The smell of tobacco smoke was always around her and always in our house, and it made me sick. And now I strangely miss it. This next part I'll call the weight of missing her. When the decision to discontinue her chemotherapy was made, I started thinking of things I wanted to say to her before I wouldn't have the chance. I landed on a few things. But really, who's to say what are the truly most important things to tell or ask someone as they're slowly leaving? But this was it. This would be my last chance. And the time was moving, the pressure was building, not to do or say the right thing, but more to grasp on whatever chance of communication was possible before it was too late. I decided I wanted to tell her I was angry with her, and to explain why, and to ask her opinion on why she thought I was so difficult as an adolescent. And I wanted to be honest about how sad I was for her because she had to die soon. These were important, heavy feelings, and I needed to work them out. But I didn't say those things, and I landed on these three instead. I wanted to know if we'd written down all the important recipes to her personal cooking specialties, which I think we did. And I wanted her to tell her granddaughter River about what being in jail was like. And I wanted to tell her how much I loved her. I wanted my mom to talk about her time in prison because I wanted River to see examples of actual selflessness and true compassion. I wanted my mom to share what it looks like to take a principled stand on something and not move, not even in the face of the removal of your freedoms, your comfort, and your privilege. The aphorisms of take a stand for something you believe in, leave the world a better place, they're ubiquitous and they will get to my daughter without much effort. But to learn from and know an actual family member who was strong enough to be jailed for working to reduce human suffering is a gift I wanted Grandma Ray to give River more than anything else. I wanted River to become aware that her grandmother's actions gave life to the words we spoke at our yearly Passover Seder. Until all are free, none are free. After that, the very last conversation I had with her was brief and unforgettable. I did tell her how much I loved her. In response, she kind of said, "Oh," and smiled softly and turned her head into my hand, and we never spoke again. I decided this was a good way to end. The need to talk about my emotions was legitimate. However, that feeling was soon proved insignificant by the incredible weight of simply missing her. That weight is the hardest, heaviest load I've ever lifted, much more so than my own emotions and my own anger. And at the risk of preaching, I think the most important thing of all is to just be there with those you love for as long as you can. For when their presence is withdrawn, the weight is almost too much. Lastly, like to end with a song. I read that Paul McCartney wrote this song about his mother, who died of cancer when he was 14. However, there are some conflicting reports that he may have wrote this for a roadie named Malcolm. Either way, I think it's a beautiful and soothing song. I'm not a very good singer, so please join me from the audience. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she's standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, they may see. There will be an answer, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. And when the ride is cloudy, there is still a light that shines on me. Shine on to tomorrow, let it be. When I wake up to the sound of music, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
As I've said, I'm not a believer in an afterlife, but I would like to read a poem that, in a sense, talks about that. And I think, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know what's going on. But this is something that is, I think it's sad, and it's also uplifting. Written in the late 1800s. The author seems to be unclear. What I have is, this is by Henry Van Dyke, called Gone From My Sight. I heard this initially when we first came to Syracuse. Perhaps the first person we met, David Ritchie, who's here somewhere. David's mom died, and this was read, if I'm remembering correctly, at her funeral. And this is, 50 years ago. I was touched by it then and remain so. I'm standing upon the seashore. A ship at my side spreads her white sails to the moving breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She is an object of beauty and strength. I stand and watch her until at length she hangs like a speck of white cloud just where the sea and sky come to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, "There, she is gone." Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in mast, hull and spar as she was when she left my side. And she is just as able to bear her load of living freight to her destined port. Her diminished size is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone says, "There she is gone," there are other eyes watching her coming. And other voices ready to take up the glad shout, "Here she comes," and that is dying. I want to bring out something that everybody will know, or certainly an awful lot of you will know. It comes out of our attic on an annual basis. At this point, the thought was that there are people who might wish to say something, and we'd like to give people an opportunity to do so. We have the time to do so, and hopefully there will be people who have things that they would wish. There's a couple of people I know in particular who have said that, and I would like to at least give them the initial chance, and anybody else who wishes to speak. We have some microphones that can come to you for that. Barb, would you still wish to speak? Okay. Is that me? Jonathan and Kim? Can I trouble you? This should work. Okay, it does.
Okay. Hello, my name is Barbara. I'm one of the members of Plowshares. And if you don't know what Plowshares is, that's pretty surprising, but we just celebrated our 52nd anniversary this past year, and it was Ray's last. And probably she participated in just about all 52 years. But I don't know for sure. I saw something in 76, her name. So longer than I have been around at Plowshares, not around. And the festival's a wonderful thing, but what I really wanted to talk about was our meetings. Our meetings were really the bedrock of a lot of lives that were associated with that. We would laugh and argue a lot, laugh and even cry together while we planned for another Plowshares. We are a motley crew of artists, activists, thinkers and doers, and dissenters. And if you would like, fellow Plowsharians, you can stand up to be seen. We have Andy, Karen, Carmen, Jonathan, Art, Beth, Amanda, and of course, Lanny. And Ray's part of the crew of folks that are, we call it subgroups. And so it's Marie, Maudia, and now Ray. My pages are sticking together here. Sorry about that. Okay. So I really did enjoy going to the Plowshares meetings for the most part, and I think we all did. And one of the reasons why was that there was one consistent thing. They always happened at Ray and Lanny's house. Or as Marie used to say in the emails, Shay, I'm sure I'm not saying, my French is terrible, Shay, Ray, and Lanny's. But there were, of course, 2 times that I can remember in the last 20 some odd years that we did not meet at their house. It was during the worst months of the pandemic, and when Ray took that little sabbatical to Danbury, Connecticut. I don't know why we didn't meet there, but we just didn't. It didn't feel right. And we would walk in the back door. Ray would always be there with a big hug and kiss. And it was one of the most inviting kitchens. And the hospitality never changed, and neither did the decor. In fact, there's that little star that Daniel made in school for Christmas ornament with his picture on it. It's still hanging in the same place. As I said before, I don't know if I said this before, but I would always usually be one of the first to arrive. And the hugs and the greetings and the warmth and like, wow, I haven't seen you in a whole week. You know, she always acted like you were a family member or a treasured friend, not just a committee member. And she would make sure you had the right bowl and basket and utensil or whatever you needed. So you always felt so cared for and so attended to. And although I hate to confess this, we were creatures of habit, especially when we came to sitting around the table. That round table that became an oval table, and Ray would always sit, I call it the southern apex, and Lanny the northern. And since I was there first, one of the first ones, I would always scoot in and sit on Ray's left side. And I just enjoyed it so much. I got to see her eat her food very separately. The food did not touch. She always had her soda, and she was always offering beer to whoever might want it. And I don't think, she didn't drink, did she? No, but they always had beer. Go figure. And I will also especially miss watching her write notes to herself on little recycled pieces of raffle tickets. So, and after Ray's death, everyone on the committee shared this one memory, and Lanny did too, that Ray would always say, the reason why we stuck together, why we muscled through some of our pain and anguish with each other, was that we ate together. And that really bonded us, and we would nosh and gnaw our way through countless meals and countless discussions that reflected both our love for the SPC, the world at large, but really the love we had for each other. And where did that faith, that sense of consensus and connection come from? It came from that house, that table, that kitchen, Ray and Lanny's. And it will always be Ray and Lanny's to me. So we will continue to do the work, eat the food, discuss and argue, love and laugh, because I think that's what we truly believe Ray would want. Our hearts are heavy, but our spirits are strong as we continue to hammer swords into plowshares.
Lanny, is it okay if somebody says something else, or you have somebody else that was...
First, Renee Felice will be with you in just a moment. Okay. Don and Steve, come on up. There you go.
So we have a numbers traditional by Mr. Traditional called the Farewell Shanty. I'm not really an accordion player. All I have to do is play one note. There we go. It's time to go now, haul away your anchor, haul away your anchor. It's our sailing time. Get some sail upon her, haul away your halyards. All away your halyards, it's our sailing time. Get her on her course now, haul away your foresheets, haul away your foresheets, it's our sailing time. Waves are surging under, haul away down channel, haul away down channel on the evening tide. When your sailing's over, haul away for heaven, haul away for heaven. We'll be at your side. It's time to go now, haul away your anchor, haul away your anchor. It's our sailing time. Lanny asked me to read a few words. It's short. In appreciation of Ray Kramer, determined peacemaker, devoted soccer coach, organizer of Syracuse Peace Council, garage sales, raffler, seller of raffle tickets, proud mother, a fine practitioner of good trouble and the great tradition of John Lewis. You are a passionate, proud, and determined lady. You will be sorely missed. Thank you. And, a proud participant, a long-time participant in the choir concerts.
Jonathan?
So we're gonna pass a mic around. We have somebody over here that'd like to start. And then after this, if you just raise your hand and they'll find you.
Thank you very much. My name is Renee Noel, and I met Ray in the bank. I was her client, and we both found out I came from Staten Island. I had just moved to Staten Island. Excuse me. And so I began to know her a little, and I found myself several times working with Ray at a community choir concert. We were at the door. And I'm telling you this because it suddenly occurred to me that there is something every single one of the people in this church can do to remember Ray, to honor Ray every time you open your wallet. And that is because Ray had a very particular way of counting money. And if you didn't do it the way Ray wanted you to do it, she would become very irritated with you. So here is the way you do it. Whenever you put bills into your wallet, you always have to put all of them facing the same way, up or down, and you always have to have all of them in the same direction. And if you remember this, when you do it, you will be honoring Ray.
Kim over there has another microphone.
Hi, I'm Carol Baum, and I've known Ray many years through our work together at the Syracuse Peace Council. The last conversation I had with Ray was about 5 minutes long, and it was when she was leaving the hospital to be in hospice at home. And I didn't really know what to say, and I asked her how things were going, and she said, "Well, I'm embarking on a new adventure." And I was gobsmacked by that. And I said, "That's an unusual attitude to have at a time like this." And she said, "I'm worried about Lanny and Lucas and Daniel and River, but I've always tried to find the positive in everything."
Hi, my name is Dan Bergevin. I'm an anti-drone activist. I met Ray about 10 years ago at Syracuse Peace Council with a bunch of us sitting around the table. And after the meeting, there was food, and we all said our goodbyes. And I went to hug Ray. I'm a mess. I'm really sorry. I gotta confess, Lanny, I loved your wife. I really did. Because when we said goodbye at that meeting, it was the first one of the anti-drone activist upstate, whatever it's called. Upstate drone activists, that's it. And we hadn't planned any actions yet, but I was the artist who was gonna help with stuff. And as I got closer to her and give her a hug, I was going to kiss her on the cheek, and she laid one right on my lips. This big, wonderful, sensual, wet kiss. I mean, I thought I was her, prom date on Flatbush Avenue in 1948 or something. I mean, I was just like transfixed. And it was that kiss that really made me understand who she was and what a loving and kind and dedicated woman that you had the good fortune to have children with and a family and so on. So that's my story. The kiss. Thank you.
Did you have your hand up? Okay. All right. Yeah. You want to go
next? Okay. I was going to use this to hold me up. Okay. I had the pleasure of knowing Ray for quite a while. I just wanted to acknowledge a role that she played in one of the key institutions in our community, a grassroots organization, Cooperative Federal, our community development credit union. Ray worked at Cooperative Federal for a number of years. She was in member services at two of our offices, and indeed chose to work in the lowest income neighborhood that we served. And I just didn't want this to go without acknowledging her role in this remarkable institution that we've built, including Lani, who's played a key role in it, her service should be recognized, and she'll be remembered for it. So, thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Genevieve Thomasette. I'm a PA at Upstate Community Hospital, and I had the enormous honor of taking care of Ray for almost 3 weeks, which is unheard of in my job. Usually I have people for about 2 to 3 days and part ways. But when I met Ray, she was on my rehab floor, and I met her. She was sweet, a little confused. And I thought to myself, well, this won't require much of my time, and we should be able to get her out sooner than later and go about my business. Shortly later that day, I had the pleasure of meeting Lani, and I think we got off to kind of a cantankerous start. To endless questions and a battle of who was going to get the last word in. We definitely did not hit it off particularly well. And I was completely wrong between stroke codes, blood transfusions for critical lab values, and a very frightful night of sepsis where I called Lani telling him that Ray may have bought her a bed on the ICU. I had the pleasure of not only getting to know her, but getting to know you, Lani. And what I thought was foolishly an overbearing family, not letting me do my job. And maybe that's the young provider in me who got humbled by this experience. I saw family, friends, endless stories of people who had the most unconditional love I've had the experience of getting to witness from people that aren't my own family. My life fell into a routine of rounding, saving Ray for last because she was my absolute favorite, telling her that I would come back up after lunch to talk to Lani and give him my updates, and so on and so forth. The last day that I saw Ray, it was a Wednesday because I had a flight to Boston the next day. And I told her that I had a job interview to become an oncology physician assistant in Boston. And she said to me, "That seems like quite a tough road ahead of you. Do you think that this is the right choice?" And I told her, "I don't know if it's the right choice, but it feels like the correct next thing to do for myself. After taking care of you, I want to take care of more people like you." And she said, "Well, in that case, you must." And I love the fact that she was so concise. I am, as I ramble on, not concise. So I appreciated that moment with her. When I was in PA school, my professor told me you will have 3 to 5 patients who will change the way that you look at medicine. And my late grandmother told me you will have at least 5 people in your life that will change the course of your life altogether. And Ray was 100% one of those people. I took the job. I will be doing that. And I'm looking forward to connecting more and helping people. No one will compare to her. And in the last day that I had her, I told her that I was going to go for this interview. And after losing people in my own life and not having the courage to ask them the question, I did ask her, do you have any advice for me, a young 26-year-old who's a little bit confused with what to do next? And she said, "If you were my daughter, I would only have 2 things to say. Number 1 is, even though you have fear, go for it anyways and don't hold back. And number 2 is never lie to yourself." She's used other words, but I'm going to keep it PG. Never lie to yourself and always tell yourself the truth. So as I approach my patients in a much better light now and a much better attitude and move forth to the next, as I embark on my next journey, I always have her in my heart and in my mind. And I'm always thinking of you, Lanny, because I think through the time I looked forward to our chats every single day. And the day that I came back to the hospital and you guys were no longer there, I felt the draft of that. So I'm always thinking of you guys. And again, I'm just so humbled and honored that I got to take care of her during those moments. So thank you all.
I don't know. Hi, I'm Eli. To me, Ray was, well, she was my non-biological grandma, is what I used to call her. I don't know who started that, but it was probably her. But that really wasn't what she was. She would pick me up a couple times a week from school, and we'd go do something, and she'd put up with me for a few hours. And I was thinking yesterday about what she really was to me, because non-biological always felt a little bit cold. And I realized that she was really more of a friend to me. And I think that like a lot of adults, when they talk to kids, there's like a barrier because everyone's kind of stuck in their own little worlds worrying about everything. And it wasn't really like that with Ray, because she was just as much a kid as I was. And she never really lost that. And I remember on the days that she would pick me up from school, I would hope that it would rain those days, because then we would get to go drive around and find puddles in parking lots and drive through them. Because that was her idea of fun. And she could do that with anything. It was one of her gifts. She introduced me to everything. She introduced me to incense and singing at stoplights and Stratego and lobster. I'm just reading off a list now. Steamed clams, car washes, window shopping at Halloween stores. And I never really grew out of those things. And I think that was what was really special about her, was that she could turn something that was hard, something that didn't really matter, and just fill it with meaning. So that's my request for everyone today, is to find something that you don't want to do, something that's work, and make it a quest. Play with it, make it fun, because that's what Ray would have done.
Well, I had the pleasure of working with Ray for a long time at SPC, and that's how I got to be on the Plowshares Committee, because if you're a staff person at SPC, you get to go to the Plowshares Committee because they ask you. And so I left SPC, but I stayed with the Plowshares Committee. But I just wanted to touch on, we've talked a lot about the bowl-a-thon and lots of fundraisers that Ray worked on at SPC, and she was on the council or board or whatever it was called over the years. It changed names. And she would save. So at the end of Plowshares, there's always a few things that didn't sell at the crafts fair table for SPC, and she would save them. Lanny must have lived with that table in their living room covered with stuff year-round of the raffle prizes that haven't been picked up and the things that could be on the raffle next year, or they could be bowl-a-thon prizes. The fabulous bowl-a-thon prizes For people who went and did the bowl-a-thon, that was Ray. She organized it, she did it, and she had prizes, and people were encouraged to come in costumes and make teams, and you got prizes. Oh, where'd they come from? Plowshares. But she really was really a foundation person for the Peace Council. And while she did lots of demonstrations and all these things, she did nitty-gritty stuff, whether it's cleaning or setting things up, or the girls would say to me, you know, you could always go to Ray if you were at some event and you didn't know where to put or how to set that table. You could just find Ray and ask Ray, because Ray would tell you what to do, you know, and be very helpful. And she was wonderful with the kids, always wonderful. She saw them. She always saw them, which most adults don't see you. You're right. Like, they don't see you. They see a responsibility. They see, I don't know. But Ray always saw the kids, and she answered their questions. So, and I don't think SBC could have done well over the last 20 years without her. So.
So I met Ray in 1990, and I was on the bowling team for a short stint. My name is Deborah, and I think that in my mind's eye, Ray's favorite moment was when she would get a strike on the left side of the head pin so she could whip around and go, Brooklyn!
Hello? Hi, I'm Marianne Grady Flores, and I'm a part of the Upstate Drone Action Committee with Daniel, Annie Tiffany, and Ed Canan, Bev Rice. There's a bunch of us in the group here. So I'm a Bronx kid. I'm from New York City, and I absolutely loved Ray's Brooklyn accent. It was like honey going over my body when she would speak. It was just like home, you know? But I'll never forget being at Art Rage, and we were having a planning session. And so, let's see, April 29th or 30th of 2011, we had gone to the base, and 38 of us out at Hancock Air Base had been arrested. So fast forward, this is October of 2012. We had done like 2 actions already, and we were trying to think. We had only gone to the front gate, and then we decided, all right, that wasn't really shutting the base down. So Ray was the one, I think it was her, that came up with this idea, let's close all 3 gates. And I was like, yes! So I remember standing out on the sidewalk with Ray as she was doing her cigarette break. And so we did this planning of who was going to go to which gate. And we get out there, and then, you know, the police came and took us away. And then when we were in the court, we get our little trespass, which is like a traffic violation, and we got our, what was the disorderly conduct, which are actually opposing, they don't even work together, but legally. Anyway, but then we start going through this line, because there was 17 of us at this time. We start getting this order of protection read to us. This was a crazy domestic violence tool that Ray knew a whole lot about because of her work in social services for years. And this colonel of the military base wanted to use this tool to prevent us from being at the gate, at his place of employment. Meanwhile, none of us knew what the guy looked like. Anyway, it was a great time being with Ray, and I loved her gumption, her courage, and her leadership, and boy, was she so wonderful. As a matter of fact, I was thinking, today we should have had our Judge Gideon with us here. He would have spoken about how wonderful Ray was as our liaison with him. She had him in the palm of her hands, you know. Anyway, thank you.
He still. Judge Gideon also sent her to prison.
Oh, yeah, he did send her to prison.
Hi, my name is Jeff Chin, and Ray first came into my family's orbit with Eastside Soccer, where she coached both of my daughters' all-girls soccer teams. And what she lacked in knowledge about soccer, she made up for in enthusiasm and a dedication to empowering young women. And she started every practice with, "Girls, go grab your balls."
Thank you. Can we put this on the...
Sure, sure.
Good afternoon. I'm Roy, an old friend of Ray's and Lonnie, and I mean old in every sense of the word. We all had a unique relationship with Ray. That was due to her ability to relate to all, regardless of personality. Her attentive willingness to hear my point of view and her enthusiastic response in agreement or otherwise always made me feel that she valued my opinion. She took joy in expressing common ideas as well as often setting me straight about others. Her beliefs defined how she lived, which was always a lesson to me. She took great pleasure in wit, which I occasionally provided. Her method of getting the most out of a series of books was astounding. Whereas I read each of the 7 Harry Potter books, Ray always took to reading all the previous books before she read the next book. I read 7 books. Ray read 28. I am sure that she derived more pleasure from the Harry Potter series than anyone else. All that life has to offer was a buffet for her. At the core was her family, and from there grew an ever-widening circle of people and responsibilities which she shouldered unflinchingly. Think globally and act locally was a slogan I first heard from her. Her fervent dedication to women's causes, civil rights, and political action was for her a full-time job. I met Ray at City College in New York, where we were doing musical theater together. To her delight, her husband Lanny continues to act in local theater productions. When Lanny was accepted to medical school in Belgium, we all went to their apartment in Brooklyn for the auction of their possessions. In case you thought them lost, Marcia and I still possess all of their marbles. Ray liked to gamble. Blackjack was her game, and she would make pilgrimages to the casinos from time to time. She and Lanny would visit us in the Catskills during the summer, and there was always the mandatory trip to Monticello Raceway. She and my father-in-law, Sonny, would check the racing form in the afternoon and then go to the track and make a small contribution, or, on occasion, share every detail of their winnings. Though through the many years, there were large gaps in our getting together. It was always as if we had seen them the day before. I know I'm not alone in how much I miss her. As I said to Lanny when he told us she was gone, the world is a poorer place today. Thank you for this opportunity to let you hear my thoughts.
Hi, I'm Marcia. My remarks follow absolutely no order as they kind of bubbled up to the surface as I was driving here this morning. So to begin with, let me say, is anyone here wearing anything made in China? I met Ray at City College about a year after Lanny did, and I saw that performance from Gypsy, and she was astounding, truly astounding. She and I auditioned for one of the musical comedy performances one year and were told that perhaps we might consider humming or just lip syncing, as neither of us could carry a tune or find a correct note. Instant bonding. She taught me how to do crossword puzzles the right way, in ink. I thought she was quite bold. I was a teacher, but I always felt I was being taught by her to stand up, say something, be polite, but make your point, find consensus, and move forward. And then she taught me how to make moule meunière in Brussels. What does a Jewish girl from Queens know from mussels and white wine sauce? But she loved food. She improved upon my grandmother's matzo brie recipe, which I didn't think was possible. Her idea of a good day was a beach, a book, preferably a mystery, and a bag of apples. She said the perfect job would be working in a flower shop because you're surrounded by fresh, young, growing things that looked and smelled good, and who wouldn't want to have that life? As my husband indicated, Lanny and Ray would frequently come with Lucas and Daniel to visit us in the summer. And we always remember when they would come to the Poconos, the unloading of the car, with Ray first with her pillow, because she had to bring her own pillow. She had a half can of open tuna fish, half a cantaloupe, one slightly brown banana, and a 40-pound dictionary for playing games in the evening. We, of course, had gone through the debate the day before. Was it Hydrox or Oreo? Coke or Pepsi? Because she was quite specific about what was allowed. Back in 1968 or so, all us college friends were busy getting married. And Jane became Mrs. Saposnik, and Susie became Mrs. Warmbrand, and Maddie became Mrs. Schwartz, and I became Mrs. Elkind, and Ray became Ray, or as Lanny referred to her, Ms. Kramer. Right. As everyone has noted, Ray was true to herself and her principles. End war. Begin an era of true equality for everyone, particularly women and minorities. Stand up against tyranny and injustice everywhere. Use your voice. Today, I want to raise my voice in celebration of my friend Ray Kramer's life. It was full and rich, and her life made all of ours better.
Hello, my name is William, and I knew Ray through the Westcott Nation and through Plowshares, and we queer boys were jealous. We always thought we had that we owned the ability to accessorize, but Ray and her hats always gave us boys a run for our money, and we appreciated that. But when I would run into Ray, she would always say to me, "Hi, you fairy, it's good to see you." And for those of us who grew up at a time that was dangerous for us, where people were cruel and we had to worry about violence, it meant everything to me, to Ray, to say to me, "Hi, you fairy, it's really good to see you," because there were so many people that were not glad to see us. And I will always appreciate that and appreciate the unlimited light that Ray brought to the darkness. And this little light of mine, I want to let it shine. This little light of mine, I want to let it shine. Let it shine like Ray Kramer. I want to let it shine. Let it shine like Ray Kramer. I want to let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Thank you.
Not everybody that wants to talk feels comfortable coming up here. So we're gonna go back and forth to both sides of the room. So Carmen's up next.
Hi. I just wanted to say that I feel very lucky to have known Ray in like 2 different parts of my life. I went to school briefly with Daniel, and I knew that Dan had cool parents because I was at their house a few times, probably when you guys weren't there. Sorry. Ben, Paul, you know what I'm talking about. But I knew that, she was kind of this legendary figure. And as I was in high school and became interested in activism, she really became this like legend in my mind. So inspirational, someone who actually went to jail for her principles, these principles that I was just beginning to, come to find on my own. Her anti-war activism, just so inspiring for a kid at the first George Bush Jr. era. And then, later I am now a member of the Plowshares Committee, probably in part thanks to her. I'm going on my 4th year now. And I just feel so lucky that I have gotten to actually, it's one of those, you meet your heroes and they actually live up to the hype situations. I got to meet her as an adult, as a woman, as a mother, as a social worker now. I still feel that I had so much left to learn from her, so I will regret that for a while. But bringing my daughter around her, poor Ruby had to be dragged to a lot of those Plowshares meetings, but Ray always made it fun. Ray, exactly as people have mentioned here, she really had a way with kids that just made them feel so valid and like they just belonged there too. So Ruby became an honorary member of the Plowshares Committee at Ray and Lanny's house. And then, sometime before Daniel met his beautiful and wonderful wife, Ray would sometimes mention to me, oh, Daniel's single, nudge, nudge, nudge. And well, it didn't work out for us, sorry, Dan. Just the idea that she would be happy to have me join her family that way has just meant so much to me, and I'm gonna really miss her a lot.
My name's Andy Major, and I had the privilege to connect with Ray in a wide range of contexts, certainly through the Peace Council, through an affinity group where we engaged in nonviolent direct action together, and I got to see her bravery, her ability to connect with all kinds of people. You know, she was the perfect kind of police liaison. She could just sort of seem to connect at a cop level that very few of us could do. She was also the non-biological grandmother for my son Eli, and I think I coined that term not out of any disrespect to Eli, but out of not wanting to disrespect her other grandmas. And Ray's role in Eli's life was really important. My parents lived quite a ways away. Sherry, who can't be here today because she's sick, her parents lived close by, but we had hesitations about entrusting Eli to hang with them. And with Ray, we knew that he would be safe, that he would be challenged, that he would have great adventures, and we never quite knew what would happen. But we felt generally comfortable, more so me maybe than Sherry at times. I also worked with Ray through the Alternatives program at Vera House, where she came on as one of the people who facilitated these educational classes for men who had been violent and abusive to their women partners. And she was sort of new to the work, but as she did with everything, brought ideas, challenges, encouraging innovative new ways to do things. And the last thing I'll talk about is that Ray, many of the things she did for many, many years. And one of those was to work on the Peace Calendar, published initially by the Peace Council and then by Syracuse cultural workers for the last 40 plus years. And I did take a look, and so Ray was first on the committee for the 1999 calendar, which meant she began working on the committee in 1998 and served on the committee right up through this year. She started meeting with us in December and early January for the 2024 calendar, and at one point she had sort of volunteered to help with kind of the co-facilitation of the process. And she called me mid-January to say, you know, Andy, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to be able to fulfill that. You know, I'll do what I can, but I can't take on that role. And so even as she was moving towards the end of her life, she had this deep sense of responsibility to try and get back and do what she can and not to make commitments she couldn't fulfill. The last thing I think I will say is that having been in innumerable meetings with Ray, I didn't always find her to be concise and get to the point. There are many times where I wanted to say, Ray!
Thank you. Hi, I'm Cindy Davis, and I just wanted to comment on one thing that Ray helped me with immensely. I was working with the daughter of some relative's friend, and she was definitely a felon. The amount of money that she stole from that car dealership and the apartment that she lived in and the way that she lived was unbelievable. But anyway, she was convicted as a felon. So she was ill. And I called Ray because I needed help in thinking about, excuse me, about the different hospitals in the women's prisons. And I wanted to try and figure out what might be better for her and what might not, because we had a little leeway before she was sentenced. And we were really worried about, she was incurably ill, so we were worried about where she would go to prison. And Ray gave me a lot of help. And the nicest thing was that no matter when I called her, I didn't have an appointment, she was always like right there. I mean, she could have been in a bubble bath, I don't know. But she was right there on the phone with me, immediately helping. We moved on from where we'd been. And the end of this story is that actually, because this woman was so ill, her sentence was commuted. So she never went to prison, but she really kind of should have, but she was so ill that she got out of it. So, but we didn't know. We thought she was going to go to Texas was our best decision because that was the best hospital.
If that was the best option, that wasn't good. Yep. Where are you pointing?
I guess, hi, my name is Colleen, and I just want, because I really bonded with Ray over our time when we went to Columbia, 2009, and I'm just sitting here thinking, well, like, she was, what a character. Well, first, she picked me, I didn't really know Ray, I knew her from the peace community, but not really well, and I was a little daunted by her, you know, and I get in the car with her, she picked me up, because I live in the Cortland area, and we get on the road and we're driving and she goes, oh, I gotta ask you a question. I go, okay. She goes, you smoke pot? I was like, oh, this is gonna be a great trip. And then we got on the plane and it was really early in the morning, so we had to, you know, we were kind of up all night and I was exhausted and we left at 6. And Ray turns to me and she goes, she had a little vial that had a little bit of remnants of weed and we're going to Columbia. And I was like, all right. And then she kept cleaning the bathroom on the plane because it was filthy. People would just trash it, and there was Ray to clean it. And I was like, this woman is amazing. And then also the thing I remember is about the food, because she had this giant jar of peanut butter, and she brought it with her, like it made it through the customs, like every time. Like, remember, nobody would take it from her. And I was like, that was this magic peanut butter, you know, thing. And but finally they did take it. And then we broke down. We were going to visit our sister community in a really rural area of Cauca, and we went in a Jeep, and we broke down, and the suspension was busted. And these guys, they came out with all their tools. They cut down some kind of like tree that could act as a little suspension thing, and they roped it up. But Ray, I don't know, she had this magic backpack, and she had this giant bag of Gorp and other food, and she gave everybody that. And so I just will love her and miss her for always. Viva Ray. Ray Kramer presente.
Are we okay? Has essentially everybody said what they wished? Okay. Oh, David.
So my name is Dave. I met Ray and Lanny because they lived upstairs from me in 1974 in Syracuse when we were all going to grad school together. Well, not quite together. Lanny was going to medical school, Ray was going to social work school, I was going to library school. And what to tell you about Ray? Everything that everybody else has already said, she was enveloping. She cared for you when you didn't know you needed to be cared for. She liked auctions. There used to be an auction house over in Nedrow. And she and Lanny took me one time. She loved buying boxes. You know, the boxes at the end that, you know, had things left in them. She bought Lanny a boat with a motor because her father and her sister and Lanny had gone to Lake George many years, camped out on an island, rented a boat to get there. She once shared with me that she had this philosophy of there was possibly the best gift that you could ever give an individual. And you didn't know, in fact, if you, I'll correct that. You would know if you had found the thing that someone would relate to perfectly. And that wouldn't happen very often. And once in a while she would share with me a time when she had found such a gift for someone. And it wasn't often the person you thought you were buying something for would just come to you that this is the thing that would go for someone else. She'll be missed. Thank you, Ray.
Well, there's a lot of question. How many people are going to come? How long is this going to last? Is 4 o'clock going to be way too long? Apparently not. And I guess I should have realized that. I would like to close, but close with a song to leave on an up note. To mention first, there's a number of heroes in the Kramer family, and one of them certainly was Pete Seeger. And it's an interesting irony that in 2003, in a January night, a cold January night, Pete Seeger was here for the People's Music Network and sang with the community choir. I joined the community choir that year so I could sing with Pete Seeger. And the irony is that was when Ray was in Danbury in jail. So she did not get to sing with Pete. I brought a postcard from the Times at Fort Benning, and Pete wrote out a postcard to her and sent her. I don't remember, I forget, somebody used her numbers. Somebody mentioned her numbers, but Pete wrote to her and sent her this postcard that's, I'm sure, somewhere in the house, thanking her for her doing that. And I would like to say this community has had a number of other people who have gone to jail for their beliefs and should be recognized for that. I'd like to close with, it's actually a Woody Guthrie song, but really made famous by Pete Seeger, and that you all should know. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Okay. Say it again? Oh, there's food. There's still food. Eat it, take it, whatever. Okay. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me. And I rambled and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond desert, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water, this land was made for you and me. One more verse. There was a big hard wall there that tried to stop me. Was a great big sign there, said private property. But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you. That's it. Thank everybody.